British media response to John Carpenter's The Thing. 26th of August, 1982. Classic is released to the world. Released 4 years after his low-budget masterpiece, Halloween, John Carpenter's The Thing hit cinemas on Thursday, 26th of August, 1982. It had a budget of approximately $15 million and made roughly $19,600,000 at the box office, which would be in today's money $47,363,005.18 and $61,887,660.10 respectively. It was filmed in Alaska, British Columbia, and Los Angeles. It is based on the 1938 novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell and follows the story of R.J. MacReady, played by Kurt Russell in the movie, the capable helicopter pilot, and the team of American researchers he is with at Outpost 31, an Antarctic research center. A dog, played by a wolf dog named Jed, is being chased by a helicopter, with a man shouting at it, and also shooting at it. The dog finds its way to Outpost 31, where it turns out the man chasing it is Norwegian. The last spoiler to the film I'll give is that the Norwegian shouts the plot in his own language, with his words translated to, "Get the hell away from that thing. That's not a dog, it's some sort of thing. It's imitating a dog, it isn't real. Get away, you idiots." Whilst a classic of the horror genre today, it was initially panned by some critics, with excessive gore as a common critique. It may have also underperformed at the box office owing to the fact it was sandwiched between E.T. and Blade Runner, as well as being after several underperforming horrors that year, such as Friday the 13th, Part 3. Furthermore, whilst the horror genre was gaining more respect and traction, it was still seen by some as a poor genre, especially by more conservative audiences. It had become so respected today for John Carpenter's memorable directing style, the ominous soundtrack, genuine fear and tension, and some truly fantastic and shocking scenes that stay with you long after the movie has finished. This includes, of course, the likes of the blood test scene and when the dog first transforms. It must be said, however, that the astounding practical effects are what helped make this movie truly stand out, even by today's standards. That is thanks to the colossal effort of the special effects team, with the incredible Rob Bottin putting his life and soul into it. In a way, quite literally putting his life into it. In fact, Robot, as he was nicknamed, had to check into hospital for extreme exhaustion on orders of Carpenter himself. This was mainly due to the fact he slept on set and worked 7 days a week for over a year to ensure the most grotesque and visceral prosthetics were achieved. It paid off, as the practical effects on the thing are one of the most mentioned highlights. In no real shock, it seems that the British press who were trying to advertise it were praising it. In an accidentally damning critique, the day after the thing's release, the Kentish Express opened up its review with, "There's not a great deal of new entertainment out." Whilst it may be strictly true, it sums up the glum audience and critic feeling of the time, perhaps brought on by the severe 1980 to 1982 recession. It is also said that Rocky, so presumably Rocky 3, released just over a month before the thing, was the made film out, pertaining to the fact that action movies were the flavour of the day for many in the 80s. The Kentish Express did go on to say that while it was worth biting a nail or two, and so this praise could be explained by genuine appreciation of the film, that they were still trying to encourage people to visit what were struggling theatres. The Daily Mirror on the 27th mentions that there were rumours of people fainting in the aisles in America. It also goes on to mock critics that walked away needing a stiff drink, yet, in their experience, most critics behave in that manner whatever the film. They do then, however, say that their only criticism of this spectacular nonsense is that it is far too gory. As aforementioned, this was a common critique. Interestingly, the Daily Mirror does not credit Bottin, instead solely crediting Roy Arbogast, who worked on Jaws as well. The Greenford and Northolt Gazette, however, credits them both. Again, it seems that the criticism of too much gore was often counterbalanced by the appreciation of the special effects. Moving into September, the Farnborough News decided to make the obvious joke on the 7th of September, saying horror film is just the thing, before singing its praises, as well as saying one of the week's big films, telling us that it was still performing somewhat okay. The Acton Gazette said on the 2nd of September, the blood-filled blobs and blotches dreamed up by designer Rob Bottin will actually make some sick. This criticism pertains to the lack of exposure to horrifying elements that audiences were not used to, unlike a lot of today's audiences. If anything, this critique is somewhat of a compliment to the film. The West Britain and Cornwall Advertiser echoes a lot of similar views regarding gore, saying it is not for the squeamish. The Bristol Evening Post, like others, praised the special effects, saying effects have come a long way in the last 30 years, referring to how much better they were than the 1951 film The Thing from Another World, also based on the novella, and this particular monster really manages to look alive. The Illustrated London News gives a scathing review comparing it to Carpenter's classic Assault on Precinct 13, another great film by Carpenter, but says on a budget 100 times as big, he hasn't made a better film. Interestingly, a lot of reviews call it a remake of the film The Thing from Another World because it is based on the novella, while a lot of people nowadays argue that The Thing is not a remake, but a literary adaptation. Similarly, a lot of the press in September were giving room to talk about The Thing because John Carpenter and Kurt Russell's Escape from New York 1981 was also being replayed in cinema. It's interesting to note and quite important that John Carpenter and Kurt Russell actually worked on numerous films together, including Escape from New York and Escape from LA, but also Big Trouble in Little China, and also even ones such as Elvis. Mentions in the press started to dwindle in October compared to this September, particularly as more films came out and less screens were playing it. Thus, the reviews got more honest. The Belfast Telegraph praised the effects of Bottin, but then went to say that Carpenter, who they noted for his mastery of tension, was wasted in this shock horror exploitation. The Staffordshire Sentinel calls it a masterpiece of horrific special effects work, but says it has too many shocks for its own good. It does give us some interesting information about how no photograph was allowed to be taken of the thing before being released. With the advent of smartphone technology nowadays, that would be a tall order today. Strikingly, as adverts for the film, the amount of showings and interest in the film dwindled, the amount of press coverage slumped with it too. This was not before the Liverpool Echo could get in on the praise of calling the movie terrifying, and the Derry Journal could call Carpenter one of the best modern day makers of horror, a compliment that still holds up. Strikingly, on January the 3rd, 1983, the Hull Daily Mail said that The Thing was an improvement on previous efforts, not least the Halloween stories, which in contrasting to a lot of other reviews of the time and even modern views that put Halloween as one of his greatest achievements and one of the greatest achievements in horror in general. In July, the Aberdeen Evening Press says that The Thing was on par, if not better, than Alien, one of the first times the British press compared it to another sci-fi horror. Similarly, the Neat Guardian echoes this and other common comments, saying that the special effects are so good, albeit gruesome, that horror fans should not miss it, and the modern version bears a close resemblance to Alien. One of the genuinely damning reviews came over a year after the film's release and was from the Liverpool Echo, the newspaper which gave it a glowing review before. The review said it lacks all the subtlety of the original, again pertaining to this view that actually people saw it as a remake of the film, not necessarily a literary adaptation. And while there are very few comparisons of it today, it's still worth noting that a lot of people, even now, do actually come see it as a remake rather than its own standalone thing or a literary adaptation. After September 1983, the thing mainly disappeared from the British press. A lot of the good reviews came from columns which were advertising showings of the thing, but some came from genuine love and praise of the film. Equally, a few of the scathing reviews came from when it had been released to video and thus did not owe it or the cinemas any allegiance. I watch at least 100 horror movies every year, at least one a day in the 100 days leading up to Halloween. John Carpenter's The Thing is my favourite movie, not just favourite horror movie, and gets at least one replay every year, and has done since around 2017, which is how I've managed to watch the film at least 11 times in my life. Carpenter purposely left a lot of his movies in an ambiguous manner, such as how Michael Myers disappeared at the ending of Halloween before they decided to make a sequel before trying to make it an anthology series. Thus, the ending that has stuck with us for its harrowing and hopeless nature has spawned many a theory. Were they both things? Did Childs drink petrol? Can you see his breath? There are just a few of these many theories that have surfaced and resurfaced when discussing this masterpiece of terror. The direction and character choices, however, along with the obviously unbelievably good special effects, are what makes this movie my personal favourite and my choice for best ever horror. Every character is smart and makes the right decision, and yet they still get taken out, creating the sense of hopelessness that every good horror needs. Halloween and Prince of Darkness are two of my other favourite Carpenter movies, with Evil Dead 2 and The Strangers being two of my other favourite horrors. But the thing just goes to show why Carpenter is deserving of his title, Master of Horror.